Hi, I'm Colette Massengale. Thank you for joining us to discuss changes to Maryland Realtors contracts of sale and addenda.
And I'm Kathleen D'Artez. Just a reminder that if you would like to hear a discussion about the new forms or the changes to the brokerage forms, be sure to watch those videos. So, let's talk about the changes to the contract of sale and addenda.
Sure thing, Kathleen. Before I do that, I'd like to alert people that we are retiring two forms that are no longer needed. They are the HAFA Addendum to the Exclusive Right to Sell Residential Brokerage Agreement and the HAFA Addendum to the Residential Contract of Sale. These forms are being removed because the HAFA program has ended. So let's get started with the changes to the Residential Contract of Sale. There actually weren't very many substantive changes to the contract of sale. Paragraph 14 was modified to clarify that if the property is assessed in the agricultural use category and the buyer does not intend to use the property for agricultural purposes, the agricultural land transfer tax may become due and could be substantial. In paragraph 25, the language was bolded to highlight the express agreement of the parties. This change was really more of a style change, but the substance of this paragraph hasn't changed.
So Colette, when would a buyer and seller use the first-time Maryland homebuyer addendum?
Buyer and seller would use the first-time Maryland homebuyer addendum if they're not going to split payment of recordation and local transfer taxes. So any arrangement other than splitting it down the middle, they would need to use the first-time Maryland homebuyer addendum. In paragraph 60, there's a clarification regarding electronic delivery. So in other words, the contract shall be deemed validly executed and delivered by a party if that party executes the contract and delivers a copy of the executed contract to the other party by facsimile transmittal or delivers a digital image of the executed document by electronic transmittal.
Is that it for changes to the contract of sale?
That's it. And in fact, those same changes were made to the unimproved land contract of sale. Plus, there's one additional change to the unimproved land contract of sale. In paragraph 5, since ground rents can no longer be created, the verbiage "to be created" was removed.
What other changes do we need to talk about?
There were 3 new provisions added to the consumer notice to buyer. One deals with wire fraud and alerts the buyer that if they receive any kind of instructions via email, they need to verify that information with their agent via a telephone call or in person. They are cautioned not just to follow the email instructions because there have been some significant issues with that. The next change involves a situation where the deposit is being held by an escrow agent who is not a Maryland real estate broker. It advises the buyer that if they want the title company or someone other than a Maryland real estate broker to hold the escrow money, then they really need to consider entering into an escrow agreement. And then the final addition was the inclusion of the smoke alarm notice. This language is intended to alert buyers that the smoke alarm law has changed. It explains that as of January 1, 2018, no alarm, battery-powered or hardwired, may be older than 10 years from the date of manufacture.
Is there anything else folks should know about the changes to the consumer notice to buyers?
No. But as always, if anything comes up, you can call the legal hotline. So let's go on and talk about changes to the next one, the kickout addendum. The changes made were to make sure that this document was consistent with the changes regarding electronic delivery that we just discussed in paragraph 60 of the contract. So those really are just technical changes.
Okay, so what's next?
The property inspections addendum. There was a change to paragraph 6 on page 4, just clarifying when the buyer is responsible for damage to the property.
Since we're discussing the property inspections addendum, I might as well ask if there's any changes to the property inspections notice.
With regard to the property inspections notice, in paragraph 3D, the language was changed from seller agrees to credit buyer X dollars towards buyer's closing costed settlement to see attached seller contribution addendum.
So that's it for the property inspections addendum and property inspections notice. What else?
Let's go on to the lease option agreement. Paragraph 17 was added in response to a change in the law. The new language says that the agreement is an integral part of the lease since it's governed by Title 8 of the Real Property Article, and a tenant or prospective tenant has all applicable rights and remedies provided under that title.
Okay, so let's move on to the next document.
Next is the backup contract addendum. The last sentence was added to clarify that the time frames in the contract will be measured from the date seller delivers written notice to buyer that the backup contract has become the primary contract. Finally, regarding the seller acknowledgment form, we changed the title of the form from Seller Acknowledgment to Agency Change Acknowledgment.
When would this form be used?
The Agency Change Acknowledgment form would be used when an agent changes roles.
When exactly would that happen, and how would that happen?
Well, if an agent meets a buyer who is unwilling to sign a buyer-agency agreement up front, that agent could continue to work with the buyer, but would need to disclose that he or she represents the seller as either a seller agent or subagent. This is done using the Understanding Whom Real Estate Agents Represent form. Let's say the agent has been working with that buyer for a few weeks, and the buyer now decides that he or she is willing to enter into a buyer-agency agreement. The agent would have the buyer execute the exclusive buyer-tenant representation agreement, would prepare the offer with any necessary addenda, and would include the agency change acknowledgement form when submitting the offer to the listing agent. The seller would sign the agency change acknowledgement form, acknowledging that the now buyer's agent began the transaction as a seller's agent or subagent.
Is that it?
That's it. Thanks so much for joining us today to talk about changes to the Maryland Realtors Contract of Sale and Addenda. There's a detailed summary of changes and practice tips that you can download from the website that include some minor technical changes that we didn't discuss today. Thanks again for tuning in.